Welcome to Fright Night.
Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end.
Please welcome Art the Clown.
We can defeat death. We can achieve every doctor's dream. You'll be famous.
I love to tell the story because it really did set me on the path to my career. But when I was about, I want to say 6, could have been 7. I remember being at I think it was my aunt's house, and they had this black and white TV like about this big, which were big back then probably, and this movie came on called Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and I didn't know anything about the monsters. I didn't know who Frankenstein was or Dracula or the Wolfman. But suddenly this movie is unfolding before my eyes, and I think it left a permanent scar because I fell in love with monsters, and I didn't know how movies were made or anything, how they made monsters or anything like that. But I think that somewhere in the back of my brain, I was already thinking, I don't know how they do this, but I want to do this. I want to do, if this is something you can actually do in your life, I want to do this. And I've been very fortunate. I've been given, opportunities to actually work on, horror shows and movies and all kinds of stuff. But it all stems back, without a doubt, from watching Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein when I was a little kid. The problem sometimes with CG is that you have these giant monsters, and they move really fast. And we as human beings, we've been to the zoo, we've seen elephants and rhinoceroses and hippopotami, and we know in our brains that an animal that big cannot move that fast. You know what I mean? The ones who get it right are the Industrial Light and Magic guys, who do the Jurassic Park films. Like, those animals have weight to them, and they don't move as, I've seen some movies where these like Anaconda is, a movie about a giant snake, and it goes like it goes really fast, and it's just like absolutely impossible. And I think our brains, know that, and so we go, oh, that doesn't look right, But yeah, I mean, you look at King Kong. I mean, holy cow. 1933, movies weren't even that old in 1933. They'd only been around for, a couple of decades at the most. And sound movies were only a few years old. And the fact that they made that movie in 1933 with just the epic, the grandness of it is today, I every time I watch it, I still go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't even imagine what audiences in 1933, how they reacted when they went in there, because, back then, we're used to movies now and everything like that, but when movies were still kind of new, they had an even bigger impact on people, because you just don't, there was no other way to see anything like that. And what the filmmakers did with that original King Kong is still, it blows my mind to this day. I did 4 movies with John Fasano, who directed Black Roses, and it was a really fun time because we were all still learning. Like, these were not studio pictures; these were very independent films, very low budget. We were all. It was basically like 4 years of film school. we would all wear as many hats as, so like, for example, on Rock and Roll Nightmare, which was the second film that we did, the one right before Black Roses, I was in the movie, but I also helped create a lot of the puppets and some of the special effects for the movie, and I was the second AD. You made peanut butter sandwiches for the crew. You did whatever you needed to do, because we were all working together to create hopefully something good. Now, those movies, none of those movies when they came out were considered good movies, right? They all went straight to VHS. That's how long ago they were made, and then they disappeared. Like they just disappeared. And if you had told me that right now in 2022 that people would be talking to me about Black Roses, I would not have believed it, because it came out on VHS and then just disappeared. All four of those movies just like they were gone. They didn't come out on DVD, or Blu-ray for a very long time. And I think part of the success of its sort of reemergence started with Mystery Science Theater 3000, who got a copy of Frank Conniff from that show, found a VHS copy of Zombie Nightmare, and they put it on their show, and that sort of people started asking about it, and people were asking me about working with Adam West and this and that, and then it's just so funny. It was like a domino effect. And then all of a sudden people were interested in Rock and Roll Nightmare, and then Black Roses and so forth, and it's so funny. I mean, we had so much fun making those movies because we were making monster movies, which is what we always wanted to do. I mean, John Fasano and I grew up in the same town, and we would make, little Super 8 movies, stop animating, little clay monsters or whatever. And so to be actually making a real, actual monster movie, was just, it was so exciting. And, we didn't have any studio looking over our shoulder. Yeah, we had investors who wanted to make sure that we finished the movie and that it was something that they could actually release. But we were sort of left on our own to make these movies. It just cracks me up that that Black Roses is something that people are buying T-shirts of and all this stuff after 35 years or whatever it is, how long ago we made that thing. The guys that we had doing the effects on Black Roses, all of them went on to have their own studios here in Hollywood and work on big studio pictures, and some of them had already actually. Richie Alonso had already been on The Blob, the remake of The Blob, and Gorillas in the Mist, and so he was already established. And some of the other guys over the years after Black Roses, they came into their own, and they worked on big movies, and the effects was something I think that John Fasano really wanted to make sure were cool, at least. I mean, he didn't want them to look cheap at least for Black Roses. They look kind of cheap in Rock and Roll Nightmare, but that, like I said, that was all of us learning how to do that stuff, and so it's a little more forgivable, I think. Every one of the monsters is made of rubber and foam latex and cotton and whatever else, but they were done by real pros. I mean, that's the other thing about the movies, is that everybody involved were professionals. So the crew, from the DP down to the grips, etc., these were all seasoned pros who knew what they were doing. So that's why the movie looks good, because we weren't just using somebody's cousin to put up the lights. I mean, we had a real professional crew right from. We shot Black Roses in Toronto. All four of the movies were shot up in Canada, but 3 of them were in Toronto, and Zombie Nightmare, the first one, was in Montreal. But they were always very professional crews, and I think that somewhat saves them from being, just discarded. The fact that they do look good, and the rest of us us actors just had to do our best. It's probably cyclical. It's probably going to have a decade where you have that kind of almost royalty, horror royalty, like Carpenter and Romero and Wes Craven and so forth. But I think that we might be entering into another one of those eras. Just looking at the stuff that Jordan Peele has been doing, and whoever did Barbarian was spectacular. I can't remember the director's name. But that was a really good film, and X and Pearl, those 2 films that came out recently, are quite good. So I think the thing that doesn't work anymore is just the constant rehashing of what are considered now classic horror movies like Friday the 13th and Halloween and so forth, because it's there's no originality to them anymore because they're just so established in the pop culture. I'm way more impressed by these guys that I just mentioned a few minutes ago that are really creating something unique, and not something we'd seen already 1,000 times. The other guy I like is the guy who did Crawl, the alligator movie that came out 2 years ago, and I'm a huge alligator fan right off the bat. So in fact, I have an alligator tooth around my neck at all times. But that was really fun, and it wasn't the usual kind of horror movie, and that's the kind of stuff I'm hoping that we're entering this sort of new age of more original kind of stuff. Although I think they said that they're rebooting everything anyway. Studios are gonna do that because it's they don't have to pay for the rights. They already own the rights, so it's saving them a whole bunch of money. I think that a lot of the filmmakers that during the 90s, 80s, 90s, that a lot of them were so enamored, and I'm talking about new filmmakers, they were so enamored with Carpenter and Romero and Wes Craven and everybody who was trying to make a movie was trying to make a Romero movie or a Carpenter movie. And very often you'd know because they wouldn't even name their characters in their movies like Romero and Carpenter. And it's fine, it's great. Like anybody who gets a movie made, I'm like, my hat's off to you, man, because this is not easy. It is very hard to get a movie made, and if you do it, then I am super impressed. But I'm more impressed if you're gonna not just do a repeat of something that you watched and loved as a kid. So many zombie movies. Oh my God, so many zombies. When an interesting one comes out that isn't just another attempt to recreate what Romero created, then I'm like, I'm really down with it. The Girl with All the Gifts, that was a really interesting version of the zombie mythology. And of course, The Walking Dead has saturated the pop culture with it. And that doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon, as far as spin-offs and so forth. But it's really like, I'm really finding that when I see real imagination at work, that's when I get excited about a movie. I have always been a fan of George Romero's films, and Creepshow, the original movie, is it's just so much fun because it doesn't take itself very seriously, and you know, it just felt like Stephen King and George Romero were like having a party and, and filming it. You know, I was on the set of The Walking Dead. I was visiting Greg Nicotero there, and we were sitting in his office, and he said, oh, you know, I think I've got the rights for Creepshow, and so I want to make a series out of it for AMC, and I remember going, so like an anthology, you know, several episodes or segments in an episode, and he was like, yeah. I said like Night Gallery kind of, and he was like, exactly, it's exactly what I want to do. So I didn't want to be pushy. I didn't want to be like, well, do you need a writer? You know, like right off the bat. So I didn't approach him about it, and he shot season 1, and he invited me to the premiere, which they held here at the Egyptian Theater here in Los Angeles, and I went to it, and I got it's really embarrassing, but I got really jealous because so many of my friends did get involved in the show. So my friend David Scow wrote the episode called The Finger, and my friend Dana Gould is as an actor in one of them, and my friend Chris Drake composed some of the music for it, and I was just like, darn it, like I want to play, you know. And so when it got picked up for season 2, I literally sat down and in 2 days wrote the whole script. Like I didn't even write it as an idea to submit to Greg. I just wrote a 24-page script and sent it to him, and I was expecting him to come back and say, oh, you know, it's fun, but you know, I've got a full slate or whatever on this, but no, he called me back like almost immediately, and he was just like, I love this, I want to direct this. He said, all we got to do is get approval from the network now. And then I was just like, oh, great, it's got to go. You know, it's another you know, step up the ladder that could bring the whole thing down. But he submitted it to the network, and they loved it. And so I was very thrilled. I mean, I've been writing for movies for a long time. This was the first opportunity I got to write for television. It was a dream cast for me. It was like Keith David and Josh McDermott and Ashley Lawrence, or you know, I'd met all 3 of them previously, but to have them all together in my episode was really exciting, you know. And I had my plane ticket. I was about to get there, got to fly down to Atlanta to be there on the set to watch them film it, and COVID hits and everything shut down, everything. And so Creepshow got shut down. And when it finally did, when they were finally able to actually start shooting again, the COVID protocols were really strict at first, you know. So, you know, George Romero very often put these, you know, sort of digs at society or you know, there's always some kind of something more to it than just boo, I'm gonna scare you kind of stuff. And so my episode deals with, you know, an exterminator who is asked by a very mysterious man to exterminate some human beings as opposed to rats and spiders and things. So The Walking Dead is a phenomenon. And you know, a TV series that goes on for that long, you know, 11 seasons, that's a really long time. And it's inevitable that you're going to have, you know, a season that's really at, you know, peaked and excellent. Like I think season 3 of The Walking Dead, with the governor, was fantastic. I loved every minute of it. But then you might have a season where it doesn't seem like much is really happening at all, you know. And it's inevitable. And then, you know, it'll come up again when the Negan episodes started, and then it dropped down again. And I think they're wrapping up in a good place. At least the episodes that I've been watching so far. And Greg is now in Europe. He is working on Norman Reedus's spin-off show, and I think they're in France. I don't know. I text Greg, but I'm not really sure where he is when he answers. The zombies have become so entrenched in pop culture that I don't know that they'll go away, especially if these new Walking Dead shows are good, which they might be. I think that there's like 4 of them, I think, that they're starting up, and one of them is Lauren Cohan and Jeffrey Dean Morgan characters in New York City. I still like it. I still watch it. I've stayed loyal to it all the way through, even in the seasons where I was kind of like, if I miss an episode, I'd be okay with it. And the great thing about movie making in general is that the things that you create will be around long after you're gone. So it does become a part of a legacy, and that's it's like, I worked on a whole bunch of Disney animated movies, and Lord knows those movies will be around forever. They will never go away. And now being part of the Creepshow family, that feels really good. And also I got to work with my friend Greg, who I've known for like 25 years or maybe more at this point, and we had worked together a little bit. I did some design work for him when he was making Joe Dante's Looney Tunes Back in Action, and but like it didn't feel like a collaboration like Creepshow was, where we were trading ideas back and forth. Like there's a giant rat in the episode, and that wasn't in my script. That was Greg, who was like, "Do you remember that? You remember that movie Food of the Gods? Remember they had these big giant rat heads, these big puppets, He goes, I want to make those. So he's like, so write a giant rat into the script, So it was really fun. It was a great experience.